If the powers that be threaten to enslave everyone and you have the ability to do something about it, will you? Welcome to Summed Up, the series where I take a game or piece of game related media, summarize it, and then give it back to you. In this one, I go over Mirror's Edge Catalyst campaign. Two little girls run scared, a gun goes off, a woman pledges her services to another in secret, a debt is owed, a mother screams for her children. Faith wakes up from her nightmare. Today is her last day in juvie. As she leaves, the prison guard tells her that Dogen sends his best. Just before Faith gets on the bus that would give her a ride out of juvie, someone calls for her from a side alley. He introduces himself as Icarus and claims that Noah sent him. Icarus gives her a beat link, a device that connects her to the network that all runners use, and cuts her grid link, the device that connects her to the network that all normal citizens, known as employees, use. As soon as he cuts it, an alarm goes off. She is now a fugitive. Noah talks to Faith over the beat link and tells her that they had to rescue her and cut her grid link because she wasn't being set free, they were sending her to a Greyland food dome. Faith meets with Icarus at the Orion building and the decision is made that there's no choice but to fight Kruger's security in order to get out of their predicament. The pair of runners get into a spat. Icarus doesn't like Faith because she got caught 2 years ago and caused a lot of trouble for Noah, the leader of their cabal. After fighting her way through the Everdyne Tower, she gets knocked down. Figuring she died in the fall, the officer leaves. Faith, however, was just hiding. Now, with no one on her tail, she makes her way back to the lair. There, she apologizes to Noah, who tells her that he has a job, for her. It's a two-man run between her and Icarus. She's to go to Elysium Labs to steal an enzyme for another pharmaceutical company, while he works as a lookout. Right after getting the enzyme, Faith sees a mysterious agent that's also infiltrated the building and follows him, against Noah's wishes. She finds the agent hacking into a computer and quickly hides as Gabriel Kruger and two others show up. While she hides, one of the two women that showed up with Kruger beats up the agent, who then commits suicide via cyanide pill. Faith decides to take the device the agent was using to hack into the computer, but gets seen. She escapes the building being chased by Kruger's sec and heads back to the lair. There, she shows Noah the device and tells him that it may be enough to solve things with Dogen. Noah tells her off, saying that they don't do runs against Kasich and he's inclined to send the device back to Kruger. In another nightmare, Faith relives the riot from her first one. In this one, she's protected by an officer that gets her and her sister away from the chaos. She also remembers her mother and the last painting she ever made. Noah sends Faith to talk to a contact of his, a tech whiz called Plastic, to figure out what the device she took from Elysium is. Plastic tells Faith that it'll take at least a month to begin cracking the device, unless Faith can connect her to a grid node. First, Faith must go to a gateway at Alcom so Plastic can remote access the grid node from it. She does this, but the terminal sets off an alarm that has Kasich pouring in as soon as it's activated. Once out of Alcom, Faith heads to the grid node. She connects to its central command unit, and Plastic uses Faith's beat link to make her own connection. Outside, the Bauble Mall building blows up. Kasich is going nuts and attacking anyone who may seem suspect. Faith heads over to Plastic's place to lay low until it all blows over. At her place, Plastic explains that the device is an Omnistat data drive that contains the blueprint for reflection, an upgrade to the grid link that Kruger has been promoting. They call Noah to tell him the news, and he tells Faith to go back to the lair so they can figure out what to do next. Upon arriving, Faith finds a couple of runners outside the main room and hears Noah fighting with a woman inside. When the door opens, the woman storms out, but stops as soon as she recognizes Faith and tells her that Faith's parents would be proud of her actions now that she's out of juvie. The woman is Rebecca Thane, the leader of Black November, a radicalist group, and the explosion at the mall was their doing, Noah explains. She wanted the drive and Noah didn't want to give it to her because he claims she's as dangerous as Kruger. Faith agrees because she had planned on handing it over to Dogen to square her debt. With both in agreement, Faith leaves to Dogen's place so they can make a deal for the drive. There, she notices that Dogen kept her mother's painting. She tells him what's in the drive, but since she doesn't have it on her at the moment, Dogen has no interest in making a deal. Instead, he tells her that he wants to show off good faith, pun allegedly not intended, and sends her to the Anansi Emporium because they haven't been paying him. When she gets there, Dogen tells her to disable the building's tuned mass damper, a giant pendulum-like counterweight used to make buildings safe from earthquakes and hurricanes. It's at the top of the building, and once Faith dislodges it, it rips through the building, wrecking its integrity. With that little favor done, Faith gets a call from Noah to go find Icarus, who's gone missing. She finds him inside what can be described as an electrical cage. After poking fun at his situation because he's been a jerk to her, Faith sets off to shut down the electricity that powers the fence. Faith heads down to ground level because that's where the switch is. Icarus tells her that he's noticing a lot of Kasich choppers flying out of their headquarters. On her way back up, Noah talks to them, but the call cuts out. Next, a warning goes out that they're being raided. Icarus screams at Faith that the choppers were heading to the lair and tells her that he'll meet her there. At the lair, they find their friends shot up and see Kasich taking away body bags. After some fighting, they manage to get an employee of Kasich for some interrogation, but it's pretty useless because he didn't know anything, and the only thing they could get is that they wouldn't submit, especially the old guy. They run away, and Icarus tells Faith over the beatlink that he has a plan. Once she meets up with him, they see a news report that states that Noah, a gang leader, was killed in a Kasich raid. Icarus explains that he talked to Rebecca Thane, and she's willing to offer them sanctuary. Faith is against the idea because Noah didn't trust Rebecca, but they don't have much of a choice. They have to lay low for a while. At Black November's base, Rebecca gives Faith her condolences, explaining that even though she and Noah didn't see eye to eye, she respected him. She goes on to ask her for the blueprint so they can use it against the conglomerate. After Faith snaps at her, she tells her that she's being sheltered for now, but at some point Rebecca will ask her to step up or step out. In another nightmare, Faith dreams about how Kruger had her parents killed during the riots, and how she left her dead sister behind in a hallway after she died from exposure to gases being used to pacify the rioters. After some rest, Rebecca explains a plan to capture one of the high-ranking Kasich officers, the one who led the raid on the lair. Rebecca will work as bait to lure her out, while Icarus and Faith will have to clear their escape routes. Clearing the routes meant disabling some turrets while being shot at by them. The mission is a success in the end, and the target has been captured. Back at the base, Rebecca tells Faith that they capture Isabelle Kruger, Gabriel Kruger's own daughter. They go to talk to Isabelle, but get nowhere. However, the mention of Faith's name seems to catch Isabelle's attention. Dogen contacts Faith and tells her that he's received reports that Noah's death was false news. He can't confirm the reports, and Faith decides to go ask Isabelle for information. She confirms that he may be alive, but has no idea where they're being held. After Faith says that she'll help her escape in exchange for information, Isabelle tells her that the only way to find out is to access the Kasich mainframe. Faith quickly calls Plastic for help, to which she very excitedly agrees to. Over at the fancier side of the city, Plastic hijacks a Kasich signal and sends a chopper orders to go near where Faith is waiting so that Faith can hitch a ride with it. She drops off at a landing pad on Kasich headquarters and must make her way to a main server so she can access the prisoner data. Faith reaches a priority terminal, and from there, Plastic hacks in and takes the prisoner data. Faith asks her to also take any data she can find on Isabelle Kruger. Once out, Plastic tells her that she found information saying that Noah was taken to a place called Kingdom, but she can't find where it's located. Faith replies that she might have a way of finding out. She heads to Dogen's place to ask if he knows about Kingdom. Tentatively, he tells her where to find the facility, but warns her that she may not get out alive. On her way to the rezoning zone, the area where Kingdom is located, Plastic contacts her to tell her that Isabelle isn't Kruger's biological daughter and that her real name is Caitlin Connors. her sister. When Faith arrives at Black November's headquarters to talk to Caitlin, she finds that Rebecca took her elsewhere to kill her. Faith runs to where the execution is to take place and interrupts it. She then convinces Rebecca not to kill Caitlin on the grounds of their family ties and that she'll give her the blueprints if she keeps Caitlin alive. Rebecca gives her until morning to find Noah and give her the blueprints. In the meantime, she'll move Caitlin to a safe house in the surface because she has a lung disease and cannot breathe underground. At Kingdom, Faith comes across Eileen Mira, a scientist that was working on reflection but was made an scapegoat and sent to Kingdom when Faith stole the blueprints. Eileen tells Faith that Noah is indeed in the facility and asks for help executing an escape plan her and other prisoners have put together. She also explains that reflection is more than a new way to connect to the grid, but something to monitor employees and influence their emotions, and adds that her and Erica, Faith's mother, were colleagues and it was Erica's research, her painting, that made reflection possible. Faith agrees to help them escape, sets off the emergency release which activates the alarms and runs off to save Noah. She finds Noah being tortured by Kruger for information, but she arrives too late. Kruger has Noah executed before she can save him and he dies in her arms. Eileen finds Faith kneeling on the ground in disbelief of what had transpired. She tells Faith that Kruger will be able to kill anyone injected with reflection unless they stop him and implores her to escape with them. An angry Faith tells her to escape while she keeps Kasich busy. Back at Black November's base, Rebecca is irate because they were attacked by Kasich as soon as they reached the surface to move Caitlin, and she lost some of her people. She storms out, swearing that she will retaliate. Eileen tells Faith that she may be able to destroy reflection, but she needs the blueprint. Faith tells Icarus, who was injected with reflection, to take Eileen to Plastic's place. The blueprint is there and Plastic has shielded it from reflection's signal. In another flashback, Faith remembers the riots once again. This time how she, as a terrified child, killed the Kasich employee that tried to save her and her sister, and how Noah took her in right after those events. Dogen contacts Faith to tell her that they need to talk and to give his condolences. On her way to his place, Eileen contacts Faith with good news and bad news. They found a way to disable reflection, but they need Kruger's grip print in order to do it, and it seems that he keeps it on a separate network. A defeated Faith arrives at Dogen's place. She unloads everything. Noah's dead, her mother worked on reflection, and her sister works for Kruger. She's lost everything. He says that he talked to Plastic and knows what they have to do. Then adds that Kruger keeps the private family network in his apartment. At this proposition, Faith replies that she'd never be able to get past Kasich in order to break in. A disappointed Dogen tells her that she's not the girl he once knew. She's now broken. To take her mother's painting and leave. With renewed willpower, she replies that she's not broken, and she sets out to prove him wrong. With Plastic and Eileen guiding her, she breaks into an art museum as a bridge to get to Kruger's apartment. There's plenty of Kasich guarding it, and Eileen tells her to avoid them. However, Faith is sick of hiding and chooses to fight. Once at his apartment, Faith connects Plastic to Kruger's private office, from where the tech whiz copies his grip print. While there, Kruger calls the apartment. They get into a discussion spanning reflection, her sister, her mother's research, when an explosion suddenly goes off in the Shard, the tallest building in all of the city. Kruger blames and orders her to stay where she is, but she obviously doesn't listen and escapes. With the grip print on hand, Eileen and Plastic start working on the virus to destroy reflection. They have to work fast because it has to be set off at the top of the Shard before it collapses. After a train ride, running through a very dangerous crumbling building and fighting Kasich, she finally makes it to the console. As she sets off the virus, Kruger walks into the room with Kasich's sentinels in tow. After a speech about how Faith has no idea what she's doing, he leaves so the sentinels can capture her. With both sentinels defeated, Kruger runs back into the room to try and stop the virus himself, but Faith outruns and outfights him. Caitlin walks into the room just before Faith can deliver a devastating blow to Kruger. The virus activates. She reels because reflection was the only thing keeping her disease in check and runs off. Faith runs after her and catches up at a landing pad. There, Caitlin attacks her, with Faith only defending herself, refusing to attack her sister. The younger of the two screams of how she suffered, thinking her entire family had died, how she convinced herself that they never existed in order to move on. Kruger arrives in a chopper to rescue Isabelle, while Faith tries to convince her to stay. Kruger commands a K-6 soldier to shoot Faith, but Caitlin jumps in the way. As that happens, the helipad begins to crumble. The chopper is hit by concrete and Kruger falls off. Faith slips and is going to fall, but is pulled up by Caitlin, who leaves her to rescue Kruger, who is screaming for help on the other side of the wreckage. The helipad finally crumbles, and no one is seen in the falling debris. Seconds later, the chopper shows up with Caitlin inside staring at Faith. In a voiceover, Faith explains how life went on as before. The employees didn't rise up, the conglomerate was still in power, and the city just kept going. Then she adds that, nonetheless, not everything was the same. They had started something, and they intended to finish it. In a post-credits scene, Faith, Eileen, and Icarus are watching the news, where the reporter says that Isabelle Kruger is now the new head of KrugerSec because Gabriel Kruger went missing during the events of the Shard. Icarus thanks Faith for stopping reflection and asks what her plans are. She simply says that she's going to run. Well everyone, that's it for this one. Click that like button if you liked the video, subscribe if you really liked it. As always, I'm Felix, and I'll see y'all next time.